Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back to the Influencer Club, and we're going to have a functional nutritionist come on, and Geeta is going to explain this way better than I can at this point about what it means to have good nutrition in our lives. But I want to get at something here because there's at times something very much so missing from our healthcare, in that how we view food and how we view food versus the healing process. We need to have the right nutrients in order for our body to heal. Our body in of itself wants to self-heal. And you're going to hear our guest Geeta actually explain this a little bit better. But our body wants to heal itself, and we have to put the right things into it. A functional nutritionist is going to be that person that's going to help come up with that plan to help our body heal, and especially heal from chronic conditions that have been with us maybe for most of our lives, that we can't remember them not actually being there. So Geeta's goal is to change how we view nutrition, just from simply being planning today's meal to planning how we feed our body so that we can live a longer and happier life. Along with that, there comes some intuitions into how our body acts and how we listen to what our body is actually telling us. What does that little tweak in the middle of our back mean? What does it mean when we feel a little discomfort in our knee or hip? What does all that mean? And our guest Geeta has turned all this into a wonderful business where she helps so many people simply live a better life through nutrition and food. Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with Geeta Sehti. Geeta is a certified functional nutritionist and Ayurveda lifestyle consultant. She will correct me on the pronunciation of Ayurveda later. But Geeta was born in India in a traditional household, and was fortunate enough to grow up with the ancient wisdom of her culture. She has had a strong connection to nature and a love for food and everything natural since her childhood. She loves sharing tips, recipes that support the body's own ability to heal itself. We're going to ask her more about the body's ability to heal itself later on too. Geeta practices as a certified functional nutritionist from her home in Coquitlam, BC, and she also does online consults also. So, Geeta, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Michael, for having me over on your podcast. It's a great pleasure to be sharing with your audience on what I love doing. And thank you again for a wonderful introduction.
Yeah. Okay, so correct me on how to pronounce Ayurveda because I never say it right. I've even had
You were bang on.
I've
You were
even had
bang on. You
swamis
were very
correct me on
good.
it. It's like, oh, cool, I finally got it right. Um, I used to do a series of here in Surrey they have had a series of yoga. It was more like a in a big event. It was an all-day event of yoga, and a specific swami he would come and guide people through it, and they would have talks about um, how the body was joined together. It was you're not separately mental, you're not separately emotional, and you're not separately physical. That it's all one thing. You're a complete being with all of these things plus more, right? So, um,
Yeah, you're very right. In fact, a lot of people who are not aware of Ayurveda
mhm,
and the basic concept of Ayurveda haven't even heard of it. For me, the easiest way of explaining to them is most of the people here have heard of yoga and meditation.
mhm,
And those are actually the two sister arms or the tools which are used by Ayurveda. And you were bang on correct that um, Ayurveda, as a basic principle, does not differentiate between the body, the mind, and the spirit. It treats all of them together, and it's like a marriage. And everything that happens in the body is impacted by the mind and the spirit, and they're all closely connected. So we do not separate the body from the mind and the spirit. And in easy terms, I would say the emotional and the mental aspect of the body is very, very important in considering the body as a whole and not just the physical aspect of the body. So that's the basic principle of Ayurveda.
yeah,
And in fact, that is something that we are seeing more and more being involved and being involved in modern medicine as well now.
yeah,
And in a holistic approach with nutrition, functional nutrition. And so it's very much become the need of the hour to understand that you cannot disconnect the mental and the emotional state of the body.
right. So, what does it mean to be a? I know what a nutritionist is, and most everybody out there knows what a nutrition is. What does it mean to be a functional nutritionist?
Okay, so thank you for asking that question because it's a field which is coming up uh, in today's times, and there is a need for it. So most of the people think of nutrition and that's a question which I get asked, that what do you do as a nutritionist and what do you mean by saying functional nutrition? And there is the difference is that when we talk about functional nutrition, we are not just talking about what you're eating. When somebody comes to me for a functional nutrition consult, it's about me going upstream and understanding that if they have a health condition, one aspect is, yes, I'm going to work on their diet to see how to help them, how through nutrition I can help them in supporting that health condition. But before I even go onto that prescription or that recommendation of what diet, I go upstream and figure out what is it that has led to that condition. So trying to understand the root cause of that health condition, which may involve identifying their genes, identifying what were their circumstances, what was their diet early on, what could have impacted their body over the years, over the last so many years that could have brought them to that health condition. So that is what is functional nutrition, that we go upstream to identify what is the root cause. There's another very important aspect of functional nutrition that we do not disconnect, as we've discussed before as well, we do not disconnect the physical body from the mental and emotional state. We treat the body as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two very important aspects of functional nutrition, that we try and identify the root cause. It's a root cause-based approach. And we work on working with the body as a whole. And the reason why we do that is also that each person is very unique, as in the terrain or the soil in which each person has certain conditions which manifest is very, very unique to that individual. So it's about identifying your own bio-individuality, which is, again, a very important aspect of functional nutrition.
No, that brings me to a question, because, all right, grew up on the east coast of North America, in which case my two siblings still live on the east coast of North America, but by circumstances I've moved to the west coast. Does that have an effect on like differences, like not so much the genetic differences, but the differences between me and them because they stayed in one environment and I moved to another environment? As far as
Definitely, definitely. Your environment plays a huge role in how how your body performs physically, and also the exposures of the environment, the seasons, the climate, the weather, all that definitely impacts in functional nutrition, and even in Ayurveda and a holistic approach. We always look into that before we understand the bioindividuality of what is impacting that person at that point of time. So for sure, the fact that you move from east to west has an impact on you.
right. Okay, and here's a curiosity question that I always wanted to I've asked this out of doctors, and they're a little fuzzy on it, but maybe an expert in nutrition might have an answer to this question. Um, when we use the term ingestion, does that just mean our food, or does that mean that like the air we breathe, the things that we touch, as well as the food that we eat?
Okay, so there is definitely, when you talk about ingestion, which in a holistic approach or an Ayurvedic approach or a functional approach, it's pretty much, we are not only talking about food. It's the ingestion of the air that you're breathing in. It's the ingestion of the microbes that you are exposing yourself to. It's the ingestion of thoughts that you're exposing yourself to. It's the ingestion of your mental state, your emotions that you're exposing yourself to through a relationship. So, in fact, you've pointed out when we say that we do not differentiate the physicality or the physiology of the body from the mental and emotional state. So the ingestion comprises of a lot more than just intake of food. It's a lot more than that. And that's why it's very important to understand where you are in a mental and emotional state with relationships, with work, with stresses around you in your environment, and what you're ingesting or exposing yourself to, and you're absorbing that definitely comes under the umbrella of ingestion and not just intake of food.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Um, but I'm going to set that aside for a second, and I'm going to ask you, why in the world did you get into this to begin with?
You know, it's a very long story, and if I try to go back and tell you, from my childhood, I have always been interested. I mean, I grew up in a household, as you introduced me, that I grew up in a very traditional household, and any Indian household has Ayurveda or the basic aspects of Ayurveda as a part of our culture. So that's something which is around us. We take it for granted. Like, for example, like in the winters, and I grew up in Delhi in a big town, and the winters used to be for 2 or 3 months when it used to get really severe. And our winters, we were given, whether we were sick or not, as a preventative strategy from my parents, we were given honey and ginger every day in the morning the minute we came out of the shower. And so these were foundational things. So for a common cold or cough, my parents did not pick up the phone to call up the doctor to check or reach the pharmacist to check what was needed. It was all sitting in my mother's pantry. We wanted to try. And most of the times, I would say 70 to 80% of the times, those things worked. We never needed to go to a doctor. And interestingly, even our doctor, if we went to a doctor, they would first check our pulse and they would check our tongue and they would ask, what did you eat? Have you been exposed? If you're falling sick, what is that you're eating? And all those questions used to be asked. So I've grown up in that environment. And then I moved. I think I was 24 years old when I left India. And I moved to the Middle East for 10 years. I lived there. And I was pretty much healthy because, you're young, you are energetic, your body can handle a lot more. And I was overall healthy. But there was an aspect of me which intuitively I would reach out for healthier foods. I would read articles which was about health. And I was always I would say, more aware than a common person who generally, the people sitting in on your left and right, I would be more aware than them of your health and food. It was something I was more interested in. Always very fond of food, of learning new cuisine, especially the cultural cuisines of countries and things like that. And fortunately, I traveled a lot and got a lot of exposure. It was only when I moved to Canada and I was looking for an opportunity to share what I knew about the healing aspect of food and Ayurveda and everything, that I had reached out one of the community centers, and they gave me an opportunity to share um, my love for how to use spices in Indian cooking. And so that was just like I was still testing the market and trying to get an idea of how I can share about my culture and how to use food as medicine. But the real aspect of me starting Living Well with Geeta and getting into the field was when I was working as a banker, as a financial advisor in a bank, and my life was very stressful. And I had been exposed, I had some tragedies in life, and it was a very stressful time of my life. And I developed something called acid reflux, and it was to a point where I could not stand, and I would feel dizzy, and I would eat, I would not be able to keep it down, and I would feel like throwing up. And so, I mean, at that point of time when you're so stressed and a parent and you're just trying to juggle so many things, and I did not want to take off from work. So I went to the doctor here and said, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. And so I was sent for some tests and all, and I got a diagnosis for GERD, or basically acid reflux disease, GERD. I won't use technical terms, but and all he could offer me did not ask what eating, just gave me a list of foods to avoid to prevent that, which were basically spicy foods and anything which caused acidity, and did not give me any other information, and gave me some medications. I, being more conscious about what is harmful, and I've generally never taken medications and all. So I started researching on those medicines, and they were proton pump inhibitors, and they had side effects in the long term. Mm-hmm. And I took it for a day or two, and I decided this is not the route I want to go. And I started researching, and I picked up Ayurveda because I used to have that background, and I started researching more. And over the course of 6 months to a year, I healed my own condition using just some herbs and some things which were available off the shelf, as in I didn't have to get prescriptions or anything, and modified my diet for a bit, and I was able to heal myself on my own. And I also knew that it was, and I figured out that it was the stress, because I could not understand, nothing had changed in my life except the stress aspect of my life, and it was which was triggering for me to have developed that condition. And in today's times, we actually have a science of neuropsychoimmunobiology, which studies how stress impacts your whole human physiology and is a very big factor in manifesting into major chronic health conditions that we have, like cardiovascular, like heart conditions, and diabetes, and all those have a very strong connection to stress if you have stress in your life. So I was able to pinpoint that, heal myself, and started holding workshops on Ayurveda, how to use food as medicine, and how to support, like in the spring, I used to hold a workshop on how to detox, support your body's detoxification pathways and things like that. And so that was my personal journey. And then things changed in life, and I quit my working as a financial advisor for a bank in 2015, and I went back to school to study nutrition more formally. And I went to Canadian School of Natural Nutrition here, and qualified myself as a holistic nutritionist. And I started practicing in 2019. I set up my own practice. So to sum it up, it is something, my personal experience with how the medical system treated me as a symptom and just gave me pills to deal with that, rather than trying to support me in finding out what was wrong with me and how I could make it better. And all I was told was that if you don't take care of it, you could develop esophageal cancer. So it was that fear-based thing which I was told, and they did some tests to make sure that I hadn't reached that stage, but they had nothing else to give me apart from that, and apart from that fear, and but nothing really to identify why was I in that condition. So that's where I was like, there is such a big gap in today's times where a person needs to get the support. And I'm not taking the credit away from the medical community. They play a huge role in acute conditions and everything, but there is definitely a gap which needs to be fulfilled. And that's where I decided that I needed to fulfill that gap for a lot of people who are interested in becoming healthier. And there are so many other ways rather than just going down the taking medicines to treat the symptoms.
Right. Yeah, there's a time and a place for we'll just call it Western medicine for now, for lack of a better word. Like I had an injury and I needed to be put back together again. Yeah, definitely. I want a qualified surgeon to do that, right? But in the long run, what I've learned about medicine versus nutrition versus healing the body healing itself is, if I hadn't gone and talked to after the surgeon put me back together again, if I hadn't gone to the physical therapist and to the person who said, hey, you need to make sure you get these specific minerals and vitamins in you, or else your body's not going to heal. If I hadn't talked to that person, I probably wouldn't be walking. So, I mean, so that puts what you do very important in our society.
It is, and it is, in fact, I will give you a better word for the Western medicine. It's the conventional approach towards medications and towards conditions. And that's why we have the functional field, which is coming up, because the functional aspect is working with the conventional medicine as well. That model needs to shift. And interestingly, our doctors actually don't even have the exposure in their whole so many number of years that they go to medical school. Nutrition is given only 7 hours of their total time in their whole education of 5 to 7 years or 8 years, or in case they decide to do specialization, is not a specialized field. And even if they do refer you to a dietitian under the medical world, that dietitian is only dealing again with telling you what to eat and not understanding the root cause. They may tell you, okay, there is a deficiency, or for example, I have a client who had a potassium, the potassium levels in her blood were very high, and she had inflammation, and she had a lot of other issues going on with her. She had arrhythmia, and she was sent to a dietitian to make sure that her potassium, because basically we get potassium from our food, from our diet, and she was told to not eat foods which are high in potassium, and she was given a list of 20 foods. And she was told to come back after a month just to make sure that her potassium levels had come down. That was all. But nobody told her why. Because of eating high potassium foods. There is a reason why her potassium levels are high. There is a balance of electrolytes, which the heart is responsible for. Her heart had inflammation. It wasn't functioning well, because the body is a very intuitive being where it knows how to balance and take what it needs. And if there is excess of that, it knows how to eliminate it. So you need to focus and function on that. And that's where that approach needs to shift. Said that there are certain minerals which are needed. Those are the building blocks of all the chemicals and the building blocks of the body. Those minerals, those deficiency of minerals and nutrients and vitamins and all that is needed. And that's, of course, you cannot take the importance of those away. They have to be there. And the other thing is, if there is anything which is breaking down, like an organ system or a function of an organ is breaking down, you need to identify why it's breaking down. One is the deficiencies of nutrients. And the other thing is there something in your environment that you're getting exposed to through toxins that your body is not being able to function well? Is there, in Ayurveda, they treat everything like every time you get exposed to anything, whether through diet or through environment, it has to be filtered out through the liver, and the body decides what it needs to keep and what it doesn't need to keep. And if that functioning of the basic of the body fails, that's when the disease process starts. So they say basically it's a toxic overload for the body, which it's not being able to discard or or eliminate, that starts the first steps of a disease manifestation.
Hmm. That is very interesting and something that we don't actually hear every day, how disease actually gets started like that. Okay, so um, Geeta, you have a specific process when you start working with a new client, and you put me through the paces of your opening interview to accepting or not accepting a new client, and it was a pretty amazing process. Um, how did you come up with that process? How did you come up with how you're going to bring people into your practice?
So I have an onboarding process, Michael, because before I bring anybody on board, I need to understand what is it that exactly they're looking for, and if I can support them. And um, see, the whole concept of functional nutrition is to understand the terrain, or what is it that has happened from your childhood, or even before your childhood when you were conceived by your mother. What was her scenario? What was her exposure? We try to gather that information because that's a part of who you are. That's a part of your terrain. That's a part of how you've manifested as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm going to try and find out a condition which you have developed today in your body, a chronic health condition or anything that has happened over a number of years, the body's ability to wanting to heal itself is constant. You rarely take it away over a certain number of years for it to manifest a disease. So I try and find out through a way of collecting information and explaining to you, which is very important before I bring anybody on board, that you understand what direction I'm going in. I'm going to be collecting and identifying your terrain, which is made up of your genes, which is made up of your environment, which is made up of your social structures, which is made up of your exposures, which is made up of your diet, nutrition, what conditions you've been diagnosed before, any major traumatic events that have happened in the past, which could have triggered something in your body. So it's a collection of all that information. And till that time, it's a non-judgmental collection of just what makes up your terrain. And after that, we sit and look for signs and symptoms of how it is manifesting. We all have weak points. We all have weaknesses. Sometimes it's the genes. Like, for example, some people have diabetes running in their family. That means they have a genetic marker which makes that developing diabetes as a weakness in them. Now, so if I'm aware of that, I will make sure that I work on the environment that that gene should not express itself, and we are capable. There is a field of science called epigenetics, which is over and above the genes. And that teaches us how the environment can be modified in preventing a gene from itself. So all that information I collect before I come up with which direction should I be going with the kind of recommendations which will fit this bio-individuality, which will fit this person, where you are as a person in a mental, emotional, and physical state. And that's how I work. And I don't know if I made it clear on what you were looking for. Does this answer what you were looking for?
Yeah, it does actually answer what I was asking, because I think people need to know that you're going to do a thorough job of looking into why things are happening in their body, and you going back to the time in the womb and everything. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah, and something else which I also want to share at this point of time is it's very important for me that I do not want to be working with a client long term. What my job is to make you identify. Of course, if you have a condition, I will support you long term. But if what I want you to understand is empower you to understand your own body. So if I give you the tools and the indicators of what you need to be looking for, so that you understand, if I do this, it takes me away from a healthy state. And if I do this, it supports my body's ability to heal itself. So that empowerment is what my role is, that I empower you to understand, because nobody identifies or understands you more than you yourself, which is your emotions, your mental state, and your physiology. I mean, that applies to even a doctor. They do understand the medical aspect of how a body functions and what symptoms to look for and things like that. But still, a lot of times people find challenging here to explain to a doctor or to any health professional what they're experiencing or what they're feeling, because nobody gets it. Because it's only you as an individual who's experiencing it, who's feeling it. And sometimes you're able to put words and sometimes you're not able to put words because you do not understand the medical terminology. All you'll say is, because even to describe pain, there are 10 different forms of describing pain. Is it a throbbing pain? Is it a sharp pain and things like that? So you're not qualified for that. And sometimes, but you understand what you are going through. Nobody else can understand what you're going through as an individual. And that's my role, to be able to help you or identify what you're going through in your body and find the links and find the indicators so that you understand this takes me away from my body's ability to heal itself, which is very, very important.
Right. I like how you mentioned pain, because most people think pain means it's gotta hurt. It's like you're trying to explain to your doctor that no, it itches, so that's a sign of pain. Versus, but the doctor would get that. But when you try to explain that to a person who's not in the medical field, they see, oh, it's got to hurt for it to be pain. But pain, in a lot of respects, just means it's a nerve saying, hey, something's wrong here. So we go to the doctor because something doesn't feel right, and a lot of times how to put this out of our society, because we have doctors that we don't listen to ourselves. We don't do that internal listen. And is that something that you're trying to get us back to, is we do that internal listen, that we understand what our body's actually telling us?
Okay, I lost you there, Michael. If you can repeat your question, your noise stopped completely.
You help people try to listen to their body and listen to what their body's trying to tell them, so that they can follow a process on their own, and then go back to you on the occasion that, hey, this is out of control again, I need your help. Is that what your process is?
Yes, very much. So I collect information and I always back up. Like if I have given you a set of recommendations for something, you have a condition and we figured out, okay, this could be the probable root cause, or this is what your condition is and this is what we are going to focus on because this is exactly what is happening. And yes, I will back it up and tell you exactly why you're experiencing this. And so you yourself start observing. And it's very important because once you start observing and looking for those indicators, and a body always tries to give a signal. I mean, one simple example I can tell you is that if you have indigestion or if you're not having a regular bowel movement or whatever, the simplest thing that you can look at is your tongue in the morning when you wake up. And you will see if you have a badly coated tongue, like there is a white thrush in your mouth or the tongue is coated, that's an indication that your body is high in toxins. So when we start working on different solutions or different parameters of how to bring that body in balance or support the detox pathways, you will see the regularity of bowel movements. You will start seeing the coating of your tongue coming down. If you have some other health condition, like for example, eczema, I'm going to take that up because we've discussed that earlier. Mm-hmm. Now, eczema is also a symptom of something which is going on in the body. Now, skin is an organ of detoxification. Apart from serving a lot of other purposes, it's an organ which allows you to breathe, to sweat, through sweat, it detoxifies. It gets rid of what is not needed. Sometimes you get rid of salts. It's trying to balance the electrolytes. So there are multiple functions that skin is performing. And if a skin develops a certain condition, it's a sign that the body is trying to push out something which is not working inside. And most of the times we say there is a gut connection, that you're reacting to something, and the way the body is showing that reaction is through the skin. So there is an allergic reaction happening, and most of the allergic reactions are either through environment or through diet. And those are, the immune system reacts through the gut and pushes it out. So that's one aspect. And the second aspect is there is certain detox pathways. Some of the major organs that the body uses to detox are your liver and your kidneys. If those channels or detox pathways, and another one is your lymphatic system. So if those channels are blocked, then the other organ which comes available to the body is skin. It's only supposed to be used for dead skin removal or old cell removal or electrolyte balance through sweat. Those are the normal things skin is used for detox. It's not used for any other detox pathways. When it shows up, or a skin condition shows up, which has become chronic, that means there are other detox pathways which are not functioning what they were supposed to do. And that's why skin is being used as a medium to eliminate something. And so we start digging deeper. It's not about just providing relief by putting some kind of a topical cream. That's again just a temporary solution. You have understood why is the body getting eczema.
Right. Is there a difference between, say, the cream, oh, that feels good, that's comfort, and actually digging deep and figuring out what a cause is, what the cause and effect actually is?
Sorry, again, your voice is not coming clear.
Oh, sorry. I'll try it again. Is there a difference between like the topical cream makes it makes the skin condition feel good, it soothes, and actually digging deep and figuring out what the root cause is? There's a difference between the two, right?
Yes, there is definitely a difference between the two, because I'm not taking away that at that point of time, when you do have a skin condition, or for example, that we do need to provide you a symptomatic relief. So if a cream which makes you feel good, or any kind of something, topical application that makes you feel good, you should not use that. I'm not saying that. That's very important, because you do need some relief. Like if you have inflammation and if you have pain, I'm not going to tell you do not take a painkiller, because it prevents you from functioning, from doing your normal everyday work. But at the same time, while we are doing that, while we are providing you that band-aid, at the same time, we need to work at the foundation level as well, of understanding why it is happening. And most of the times when people come to me is, if it has just happened once and you applied something and it's gone, you won't need to come back to me, because maybe it was sometimes we do get exposure to something which is just temporary and the body does react to it. Like if you get a viral infection or something, and as far as the body is able to fight the virus and it gets eliminated, and you come back to a healthy state, and that's fine. I'm not looking for those kind of clients. I'm looking for people who have a chronic condition. In spite of providing that topical relief, it keeps coming back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what is the difference between an acute and a chronic condition. A chronic condition is that there is something which the body is getting triggered by, and we need to identify what is it that is triggering or creating that imbalance for it to manifest. And that's what a chronic condition is, that it's over time. It's not getting treated.
Right. So you have to go back to the root cause, and then fix that, and then move and build everything back up again.
Exactly. So we go upstream to identify what has gone, what has happened previously, where the imbalance is, and then start working with that. And that's why we're not looking for just a symptomatic relief. A symptomatic relief will be provided by giving you something, which I also a lot of times do give my clients some things. And most of the times the approach is, let's try to avoid any toxins and any chemicals as far as possible. But sometimes they also have a role to play to give you that symptomatic relief. And that point of time, if it's very intense, But then in the long run, we want that to be treated completely so that you don't even need that topical application over time.
So, what is the ultimate goal of you working with a client? What is the ultimate goal that you want for them?
What is the optimum?
The optimum goal for working with a client.
Okay, so the optimum goal for me to work with a client is that they can feel healthy about themselves. They can take charge of their own health and well-being. They understand how their body functions. What is it? Because we all are very unique. Like in Ayurveda, we believe that each person is has a different constitution, which are also called doshas or humors. And the whole goal is for you to be able to identify what works for you and what doesn't. What is it that keeps you in a state of homeostasis or in a state of health? And what is it that doesn't? And my ultimate goal would be for you to identify that when you are in that state of homeostasis, how you feel in your body. You feel healthy, you feel well, you feel energetic, you feel motivated. And that is what that motivation of feeling that state, in being in that state, is what pushes you to take care of your health. It just becomes a shift in your lifestyle of how you take care of yourself. It's not about just doing it short term. My main goal is that there's a shift in your lifestyle where you are a priority and you understand how your health, how you can support yourself.
Right. Cool. Now, because we're actually starting to run out of time. Oh my God. It's amazing how time flies when you're just sitting here having fun, right?
I know. We can talk forever about this.
Yeah,
at least I can.
I'm like debating, should I make this like a like do 2 or 3 more parts with you or something, because there's like so much information to healing our own bodies and understanding how our body actually heals, just naturally wants to heal itself, right? That
Yes.
in living that the lifestyle that supports that too. If you if we were to, because I always ask people this towards the end of this, what would the world look like if it was the ultimate or the perfect world? What would that look like for Geeta?
Okay, you'll have to repeat that. Sorry, Michael, you'll have to repeat that.
Your idea of the perfect world, what would that look like?
All right, so my idea of a perfect world would be a balance between a balanced individual who's healthy, who enjoys is stepping outdoors. Everybody gets an opportunity to spend some time in nature, and you're aware of how to eat, how to feed yourself, and understand your own individuality to be healthy. And that health is not just in physical terms; it's also understanding your mental and spiritual health as well. So my ideal world would be where the governments are not spending resources on healthcare and hospitals and all, whereas supporting getting the right kind of healthy foods and opportunities to eat the right way of connecting with the nature and getting food with less toxins and making the children at that grassroots level understand where that food comes from and what is it that nourishes them and what are the basic building blocks of a healthy body.
Mm-hmm. What are the best ways to get a hold of and work with you?
What are the best ways of?
To get a hold of you and work with you.
Okay, so I have a presence on social media platforms. I have a website. You can reach me on livingwellwithgeeta.com. I have an Instagram page under the same name and a Facebook page. You can reach me on my website. You can book a complimentary 30-minute session with me to learn more about me and my approach if you have any specific health condition. So various ways of reaching out to me, and you can send me messages on my social media pages as well. I regularly post on those. And yeah, I would love to work with anybody who's interested in taking charge of their own health through nutrition and lifestyle counseling.
Awesome. So remember, everybody, It is Living Well with Geeta, and that is Geeta, Geeta. And she's wonderful. You'll really enjoy working with her. I've known Geeta for almost a whole year now, and she's become a valued friend and a person I'm getting to really enjoy talking to on a regular basis. So when you work with her, you're going to feel better, and everyone around you is going to notice how much better you actually feel because you're working with her. So thank you for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And I looked up at a shooting star, and then I wondered who you are. I just need to know. So I wished upon that shooting star, and then I wondered where you are. Is it destiny, or is it meant to be? Power of the mind is something we cannot hide. Oh, help us to go and I looked up at that shooting star, and then I wondered who you are. I don't know your name, so I wished upon that shooting star, wondering if you feel the same. Is this destiny, or is it meant to be? Take me like a little child in your arms. We can drift away to another
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.